What is going on, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video as we're here for Ring of Honor Wrestling TV Review, episode number 70. Every week it's just going to get a bigger number, and 70 is already a crazy number. And this was a pretty crazy episode of ROH, if I say so myself. I normally tell y'all when to go ahead and check a match out, as I will go ahead and say that now. A little bit of a spoiler, because our main event is a Ring of Honor World title match, Mark Briscoe versus Kyle Fletcher. But we got a ways away before we talk about it in this video, because that's our main event match, this last match. So let's get through everything that happened prior to it, as we start this episode off with an emergency minion empowerment meeting. I always thought that the E in the mem was emergency, but at some point it changed to empowerment. Athena, who announced last week she is out with an injury that was originally supposed to be 4 to 6 months recovery time. Now the ligament is completely torn all the way, and she is scheduled to be out 8 to 12 months. And that she does not feel safe anymore here in Ring of Honor, and has recruited 2 security guards to be joining this group. I don't really remember what they look like. I will go back to look at them. They don't have names as of right now. So it will be interesting to see if these 2 security guards stay the whole time or if they change. I'm looking too much into it. And that she and Billy Stark still wants to get revenge on Queen Amanada and Red Velvet and teach them a lesson. I have no clue when that will happen. I have no clue what the future of this championship is, because Athena being out almost a year is pretty crazy, but nothing was highlighted or talked about with that in this segment. As our first matchup is Alex Reynolds versus Lee Johnson. Reynolds is frustrated early after Johnson hits a series of arm drags and drop kicks. Following a dive to the outside, Evil Uno distracts Johnson, with Reynolds taking advantage. Reynolds misses a moonsault, and then Johnson hits one of his own. The 2 exchange roll-ups after this. Johnson sends Reynolds into the corner, taking out Evil Uno nearby, and then follows it up with an elevated reverse DDT, aka the drop shot, to win the matchup. We had a quick matchup up next, with it being Marina Shafir versus Erica Lay. A dominant Shafir performance, including several takedowns, judo kicks, and the mother's milk sleeper hold to pick up the victory. I have not watched this week's episode of The Boys yet, so I can't make that reference that I made last week, even though I alluded to it right there. The Undisputed Kingdom are being interviewed by Archie. I don't know how to say this name, and Matt Taven kept mispronouncing it and asking her what it is, so I've got confused with it. But essentially, the whole point of the interviewer's name being mentioned is A, it's nice, common courtesy, and B, Matt Taven was tired and is tired of people wasting the Kingdom's time, and they are tired of facing weaker competition, and even pray. They get on their knees and pray for more competition, which next week they will be getting that in a Proving Ground match involving Metalik and Commander. Another quick matchup up next, this one being Lance Archer and the Righteous versus Duke Davis, Victor Benjamin, and Cameron Jones Jr. I will say, though, that this was a good matchup. Archer and Duke are the first 2 to start the match with a series of elbows. Frequent tags are made, with Victor breaking up a pinfall after a Vincent Swanton, but could not break up a Righteous Orange Sunshine that leads to the Righteous and Lance Archer winning. Next matchup is Taya Valkyrie versus Trish Adora. And I will say this now. I wish I was able to write more notes on this match, but right when I thought it was picking up, it ended. So that's a bit of a spoiler. But chops do start this match up. We get lots of submissions between both. This is until Valkyrie transitions this into the Shania Payne foot stomps and wins the match. Like I said, I thought this was going to be like the match picking up then, but no, it ended. Which is very odd, because I said something very similar to this with Trish Adora versus Harley Cameron 2 to 3-ish weeks ago. So I like watching Trish Adora compete in the ring. So maybe I should just write the moment the match starts, start writing notes. That way I'm able to talk about it more. Layla Hirsch has an interview backstage and says that she has beaten Diamante 4 times in a Ring of Honor ring, which I did not fact check it, but I would fully imagine you wouldn't be saying it if it was false. And this prompts Diamante to interrupt and say something that is a bit hilarious, that yes, you have beaten me 4 times, but nobody remembers it because I beat you up after the match. These matchups don't mean anything. The records don't mean anything. What happens after the matchups means something. I don't know how that works. But this does set up a future matchup between the two later on, as they still want to fight one another. And this next matchup will be a no-holds-barred match. I don't know when it will take place, but it shall be interesting. A Proven Ground match. Billy Starks versus Angelica Riss. Starks is aggressive early. This is highlighted with a big boot sending Riss to the outside and several attacks into the barricade. And then Starks wins the matchup with the hammerlock fish hook. As now we get to our main event matchup for the Ring of Honor World Championship. Mark Briscoe versus Kyle Fletcher. Mark Briscoe's first world title defense. He's had one match in ROH since winning the championship a couple months ago against Griff Garrison. That was a Proven Ground bout. But this matchup does have a bit of build and history between one another, as both have exchanged pinfall victories against one another. A couple weeks ago, in a 6-man all-star tag match, Fletcher pinned Briscoe. And then the next week, 2 more men were added to that match, and it made it an 8-man all-star tag match with Briscoe getting the victory there. So tied 1-1 per se, and we have this matchup. Now, Ian Riccaboni mentioned on commentary, if you remember last week, Atlantis challenged whoever is going to be the TV champion, which is Kyle Fletcher. And that matchup is scheduled to take place tomorrow in CMLL, so I don't know how that will transition into the ROH TV portion, so I'll be able to inform you next week, though. So, this matchup, though. Fast-paced very early, with Fletcher slowing it down with grounding Mark until a tope suicida by Mark. Fletcher fights back with a kick on the apron and throwing Mark into the barricade several times. Mark starts to fire up with some redneck kung fu and lands a fisherman's suplex off of the top rope. Mark stops a pile driver on the apron by Fletcher and follows this up with the Cactus Jack elbow. Fletcher stops a froggy bow and hits a spinning tombstone for a close 2 count. Mark hits a Spicoli driver and froggy bow for another close 2 count. Both battle against one another with several kicks, but a big lariat and Jade Driller by Mark leads to him retaining his Ring of Honor World Championship, as now he moves on to Sunday as he is competing in the TNT title ladder match at Forbidden Door, which was mentioned several times on this episode. My Forbidden Door predictions will be out tomorrow. Now, I will say this. Very good matchup. No complaints with the matchup. No complaints at all with this episode. Very good episode. This is just me overthinking everything, and I kept overthinking it because Ian Riccaboni kept saying Fletcher wants to join Jay Lethal in being the only man, or he wants to be like Jay Lethal and be Ring of Honor and Television Champion at the same time, World Champion, TV Champion at the same time. And Mark Briscoe historically has always wanted the Television Championship. And now he technically beat the Television Champion in a one-on-one match and is not rewarded with the TV title. So if you keep up with the history of lineal champions, aka when a champion is beat and they still hold the championship, I'm going off on a tangent. Mark Briscoe, in my eyes, for a moment at least, is World and Television Champion. I'm trying to stop. I'll stop now. Stop confusing. But like I said, very good episode. A lot to look forward next week because we already have the Proven Ground match announced. I would hope the Layla Hirsch Diamante match is next week as well, but if it was, I feel they would have announced it. We'll see who the TV champion is. We'll see who the champions are coming out of Forbidden Door and how much that affects Ring of Honor this time next week. So thank you for watching this video. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.